To order. ASEP starts today, so I'm sure we're not going to have a quorum. I wanted to go to San Diego, I'll tell you that. We did have a nice weekend, though, but I still would. What a beautiful place on earth. First and foremost, so we can do a roll call, but I'm ticked off everybody on the chart who's here, so I think a roll call, there's 5 of us. I think it's, oh, Craig, when did you sneak in? I didn't see you, baby. See, maybe I should be doing a roll call.
When you say ticked off, do you mean?
No, tick. Don't say that. Don't say that. I would request a approval of the minutes from June 4th. Seems like it was so long ago. Any accepted minutes would be approved. Any deletions, corrections, or additions, just let me know. But can I have a motion to accept the minutes?
We can't vote on that, though, can we?
Oh, yeah, we don't have enough people, so.
So we're gonna have to.
Yeah.
You can just send it electronically.
Yeah, and I'll ask everybody just to sign off, and we can do it that way, because, yes, I wish I was in San Diego. The first thing on old business is BLS updates. For last week, we had CMAC, and we had to table all of our BLS updated protocols. It was a request from outside of our venue, mainly from some political avenues and from some outward pressure to the Department of Health. So they are tabled for right now. I'll get more information on that as it arises, but kudos to Dr. Fulligar and to Dr. Daly for getting them into position. What we can do is I can send out copies to people if you'd like to review it and just look at it. We're trying to organize it so it's all in the same verbiage, same outline, same structure as the ALS protocols, and it will be the first time ever they've been in sync in New York State. So we're trying. The process there was halted. It also involves that AMT level of care, and I'll talk a little bit about that from CMAC. Why don't I bring it up, because it kind of goes right now. I'll jump out of the order of the agenda. So at CMAC, there was a few revisions that came down for specific areas. New York State brought in a few things from it's New York City, brought in a few things from their ALS protocols, and they eliminated etomidate from their formulary and replaced it with ketamine. They also brought forward transmucosal administration of fentanyl, and there was a lot of conversation back and forth between Mr. Greenberg. Ryan is the new replacement, the director for Lee, and he's been doing going around the state visiting and touring, both a listening tour, he calls it, at various sites. So he's bringing back all the information from each area, which we'll try to tackle one place at a time. The biggest things coming up are people talking about the mental health issues, pretty much looking at statewide quality measures, and really to try to provide a better communication conduit from CMAC and the state office. They're going to release a bureau newsletter, which will have more information to go to each council and from each council, and to really hopefully expedite and facilitate that communication around the state. The CC to paramedic program, the application process should be launched in January. Once it'll start, once you complete the application, it'll take 12 months for the course. They had some CME changes that were program changes, and the instructor component should be ready by the end of the year. He discussed all the new staff and new interns at the department, and discussed, things about how everything's trying to go electronic now, that everything will be on the online site, even the inspections, the back and forth documentation, and there'll be patient care reports hopefully on a single hub called the hospital hub, and you'd be able to obtain electronic PCRs there, so it'll lessen that time frame of delay of when you drop off a patient and the PCR is available to the their providers in the ED. In the state of New York, we have 3 million calls per year, so it's a pretty voluminous number. And so it's a process, but it should work and they will get it through. We ended CMAC with an update from Nassau County on a complicated kind of process we initiated with a an agency there, and it's all been cleared up. We ended the meeting with kind of, I don't know, don't look at it on the video, but it was kind of a crazy, we had people come from Wadsworth, the two people in charge of the transfusion center applications now, and we got into a kind of a discussion about the laborious task it is to become a transfusion service, and they felt they had made this a very streamlined approach. It became pretty boisterous, let's put it that way, and so we'll see what happens. That's the way it's left for right now. They're still trying to redo it. These two poor women were kind of assaulted by all of us on the CMAC, but they unfortunately, ended up inheriting this whole program, so they're trying to make it better. We have to try to work with them. So they're right now in the state, there's 10 agencies that have approval to do such, but if you look at the number we have in the state, it's like not even pittance of the number. So going forward, I'll keep you updated on all that. The BLS stuff, I'll try to get out to you. I'll ask them if I can release it, because I figured we'd have it at least in format to show today, but they put it all on hold. So I'll request if we can just send it out so everybody can peek at it for now.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah.
Murphy? Just as folks start to review the updated BLS protocols, we'll be doing something very similar that we did for the ALS protocol rollout update a couple years back. So those items which are especially interesting, innovative, or represent a great topic for further education and improvement, just highlight them or star them, because from the Hudson Valley we'll be leading a similar sort of simulation-based video CME to associate with the protocol update whenever that happens early next year. So, those ideas that really capture your attention and say, hey, we can dig in as a community in a region and upgrade the collective level of care, just star them or put in an asterisk or say, oh, I can think of a great scenario to encapsulate this protocol update, and we'll build a consensus and record those videos hopefully either Q4 this year or Q1 next year.
And I should have ended that with the whole transfusion thing. They had penalties in there for transporting with blood if you weren't part of the transfusion service. So as a group, CMAC put forward a motion to the commissioner to say, please do not hold harm to anybody who is transporting patients with transfusions, blood running, because one, it's to save the patient. Two, it's not something we try to do, but they have to hold harmless until this is worked out exactly how they want it to be done, and get more people on board. It's crazy to try to penalize anyone. So we made a motion to go, it has to go in a letter format to the commissioner, so that was done.
What was New York City's rationale for just pulling etomidate?
Yeah, it wasn't
Sorry, the rationale for what?
pulling etomidate. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. They feel that the utilization of ketamine is more broad, and so they can use it across many protocols. So they felt that narrowing it down to just the one drug and trying to reduce the number out there. So they switched and eliminated it and replaced it with ketamine. I thought it was very interesting.
Some additional insight. New York City typically does not have a depolarizing agent or paralytic as part of the RSI process. Rather, they give larger doses of etomidate. So there's a potential for some harm there. Plus, first pass success, as we know, all emergency physicians are.
You have to raise your voice for me, Dr. Rashad, that goes on.
As we know, first pass success can also be increasingly challenging without the implementation of a paralytic agent. And ketamine is a stepwise upgrade to an etomidate only RSI process.
It just seems that there are some indications for etomidate that are great. There's the really short-acting benefit of it without the side effects of a large dose of ketamine to get somebody really sedated. But
especially in the setting of decompensated heart failure with extreme hypertension, such as CHF, or intracranial bleeds, where patients also have very high systolic and diastolic blood pressures. Ketamine may not be the ideal agent in that regard.
I guess they have to weigh the fact that they have a huge number of ambulances and a large stock that they have to deal with. So there's probably some financial implications that weigh in on the decision.
And I think also their transport times, because it's so proximate. They don't have any really delayed pickups and transports, So, although sometimes crossing the city can be, but, definitely I think that's why that was the nidus behind it. Mission Lifeline semi-protocol, I don't have anything for that. Okay.
I don't know if it's just must be something that we
It's
have.
ongoing.
Yeah. Service upgrades, none for this meeting today. Evaluation Subcommittee report. Dr. Ashad.
So we have a case to present. We can present it without the forum session.
Yeah, I think that, these are not things we quote unquote vote on, more so discuss and have input and other pairs of eyes looking at it.
So we have one case to discuss. The concern was brought by one of my colleagues at Master for a potential esophageal intubation. There was a municipal agency dispatched for an ELS call, respiratory distress, and that agency is not transporting, so simultaneously a private ALS provider was also dispatched. I'm going to present the case at large. I think for the most part, everyone involved attempted to do an exceptional job. There are some areas for improvement. And then broadly, I'd like to discuss within the region our approach to ensuring the high standards that are associated with this critical care procedure, endotracheal intubation and pre-hospital RSI. So it's a woman, approximately 60 years of age. 911 is called for respiratory distress. The municipal agency is dispatched and ultimately starts caring for the patient. A private EMS agency, ALS truck, is also dispatched. And initially, with the municipal crew, they found the patient to be in respiratory distress using accessory mouthful use, speaking in short sentences with ongoing distress. They started appropriate ALS interventions, including a set of initial vital signs, adding supplemental O2, and then ultimately initiating bag, valve, mask ventilation to help support the respiratory status, and then ultimately pre-hospital CPAP. Now, simultaneously, the private truck is also dispatched. It sort of coincided with a change at the county level where the specific GPS instructions were not transmitted to the truck, and there was some delay, which was certainly not their fault, in arriving on scene. One of the field supervisors from the municipal agency was also standing in the side of the road and was able to grab their attention, and they proceeded with their equipment to the patient's bedside. They quickly determined that she needed to be transported quickly. She was moved to the truck and CPAP was continued. Of note, there was copious vomit, both preceding, during the active interventions. And the patient had actually been discharged from the hospital for an aspiration pneumonia in the recent past. With CPAP, there was some marginal improvement in the patient's oxygen saturation. However, her mental status declined. The private ALS provider called our department for med control orders to proceed with RSI and was granted orders for etomidate and HVREMSCO and efficiently was able to pass the tube using the RSI meds. Now, the complications or questions stem from this point forward. During that process, there was copious vomitus in the airway. Aggressive interventions for suctioning were implemented. The paramedic who was performing the procedure noted a tube to pass through the port, but nevertheless, there was copious vomit within the tube itself. They were able to auscultate bilateral breath sounds. However, they were never able to obtain an end-tidal CO2 reading, which was attributed to obstruction of the ET CO2 port on the endotracheal tube itself. The patient's oxygenation hovered between the high 70s and the low 80s, and they were received in the emergency department 4 minutes thereafter with no end-tidal CO2, as well as the patient remaining hypoxic. The ED physician was concerned that it could potentially be esophageal because there was no end-tidal CO2 reading. That tube was pulled and the patient was re-intubated using GlideScope or a video laryngoscope. Now, we had the opportunity to meet with everyone involved as well as the QA directors of both agencies. I firmly believe that everyone involved brought excellent ALS care to this case. And in fact, I do believe the patient was endotracheally intubated. The areas where I personally have concern, and I'd like to direct the discussion, is if the tube is placed, even if copious vomit is obstructing the tube without end-tidal CO2, what is the appropriate course of action for the provider in that situation? Is it to pull the tube and to proceed with BVM since tube cannot be 100% confirmed? Or is it to carry on and continue to ventilate through the mucked tube? I'm not sure the exact answer, and I'd like to bring that up for discussion. One room for improvement, however, though, was during that 4-minute interval, which is, I'm sure, the blink of an eye when resuscitating a critically ill patient in the back of the truck, it would have been opportune to update the emergency department to let them know that they believe the tube was in place, however, they did not have an active end-tidal CO2 reading, and to get further guidance from the medical control physician on how exactly to proceed. So that's the brief presentation. I'd like to open up the conversation for discussion, questions, and any further inquiries.
What was the total time they had the patient?
Total time, it's complicated because the municipal agency was first to arrive on scene, and that was an ALS provider as well. They did a fair bit of resuscitation on scene. And then there was a 15-minute or so delay of the private ALS provider arriving to the scene due to the county issue.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunate but unavoidable, and certainly not the fault of the provider. And then quickly, upon scene, they decided that they needed to move. It was about a 12-minute transport time to the hospital. And they did stop to obtain medical control orders, stopped the ambulance to intubate and give RSI medications. And then after the procedure, it was a 4-minute transport to the hospital itself.
I think requesting medical control when you find that you don't have a CO2 detector working and what to do in that scenario might have been a little bit more advantageous. But like you said, it's 4 minutes and it's a tough call because you're in the back, you're trying to do these things, trying to resuscitate them, but that might be the only recommendation.
Some
Out of that.
additional details. The case was reviewed with each individual agency's QA director. The paramedics, which I know personally very well, in my estimation, are excellent clinicians. And there was some remediation process with each individual agency. For the provider that performed the intubation, the RSI or MFI credentials were temporarily suspended pending this conversation at the evaluation subcommittee level. But nevertheless, the provider was able to practice at an ALS level and indeed has transported several critically ill patients with excellent performance and care in the subsequent future.
They don't carry the color metric, the ones that go on the end of the tube that you.
I believe the New York State protocol is to have a numeric continuous end-tidal wave.
Right.
But
We've pretty much gotten rid of those other ones? Because those are useful in this instance. I mean, because you can pop it on and you'll get a color change. Which at least gives you some confirmation that
We
you're.
got rid of those a bunch of years ago because they would end up fouling really quickly, actually. If there was a lot of vomit into, then the liquids would just blow out on
the total scene time for the municipal agency was 40 minutes, and the total scene time and transport time for the private agency was 25 minutes. It would also be a note to add, the patient was ultimately admitted to the ICU, but prior to going up to the unit, had a CT scan of the brain which showed profound anoxic brain injury, and the family ultimately elected to withdraw care for that patient if it expired. Any additional thoughts, comments?
How old was the patient? 60-something?
60s.
I'm 60. Due to be 61 soon.
I would just say, use the seat times seem to be a little bit more.
Yeah.
Again, we always kind of, should we stay and play, or should we scoop and run? And put it in, even in the ED, I want to get rid of the sick patients as soon as I can. I want to stabilize them, resuscitate them, and either admit or transfer. And I think EMS needs to have some of that same approach without being cavalier about what they're doing. I think it's a tough call. And again, I'm sure these medics are very good medics. Sounds like the process is was adhered to in terms of review. But that might be my comment to consider faster turnaround.
This was a challenging situation because the municipal agency is no longer allowed to transport. And at the same time, there was we could get into the details, but they're not as relevant. Our county duchess had changed the dispatch protocol and information which is sent to the private agency. And they had a really tough time ultimately finding the location, which certainly contributed to an accident.
It was additionally noted by both sets of providers that the original location of the patient was not idealistic to perform the skill set that needed to be done.
At the state, we talked at the collaborative protocols of really using end-tidal as a gold standard for everything, including any other kinds of airway devices, suprasotics, etc. So I think that's a really good point to continue to use end-tidal as a gold standard for any kind of advanced airway. And I think that should sort of be pursued a little bit more.
With full humility, I have performed endotracheal intubation in the emergency department. I would have sworn that the tube passed through the port, but end-tidal CO2 was undetectable. And in that situation, my practice is to pull the cord, rather pull the tube. And
Don't be pulling the cords.
Yeah,
Just because you want it between them.
Make the whole picture.
Sorry.
I delivered my firstborn child September 1st, so I was stuck on the cord a little bit. Nevertheless, an end-tidal CO2 of 0 has to raise the red flag. So
Yeah.
despite a 4-minute transport time, you either pull the tube, pursue back valve mask ventilation, pursue a supraglottic airway, or even potentially attempt to lead intubation.
Was she doing really poorly on the BiPAP?
Her mental status had decreased significantly, and
Okay.
she was continuing to vomit
Okay.
into the CPAP circuit. So again, the medical decision-making up until that time point,
Was,
I think, was excellent.
yeah.
And really, it's the experience of the providers to say, hey, when things do not go as expected, what's my backup, what's
Yeah.
my backup, what's my backup?
And to recognize that she was not improving and actually declining.
I missed when she got to Vassar, was the tube in the esophagus? I mean,
Nobody knows.
Well, after the re-intubation, did things change a
suddenly
bit?
dramatically
After
improved.
the video laryngoscopic intubation and the initiation of higher levels of PEEP to improve the oxygenation, the patient's oxygenation status did ultimately improve.
So that could be another problem, you know, you don't have PEEP in the field like that, and sometimes you need those higher pressures to be able to, especially aerate aspirated lung.
I would without a doubt agree, which boils down to, again, I think a common theme in this case is even though it's only 4 minutes out, reaching out to that med control physician for further guidance would likely have been the best possible scenario.
Really quickly, were there any attempts made pre-hospitally to kind of double-check measures that were already in place? So were any attempts for deep suctioning via endotracheal tube?
Sir, you gotta
replacing-
slow down considerably.
Sorry.
Any attempts for what?
Were any attempts made pre-hospitally when the patient was intubated the first time to deep suction to try and attempt to clear that intubation tube and replace the waveform capnography sensor? Were any of those performed to kind of troubleshoot?
Aggressive suctioning, deep suctioning, as well as nasotracheal pharyngeal suctioning were attempted before, during, and after the procedure. So again, the acumen of the ALS providers, in my estimation, is really top. Nevertheless, end-tidal CO2 is 0.
Is an end-tidal CO2 of 0. Not something you want to see.
So kind of wrapping up, I think, knowing the provider, I would feel comfortable with, having undergone remediation at the agency level, restricting the MFI restriction for this particular provider. And I think we should perhaps discuss a tag in regards to the standards within the Hudson Valley for agencies that do have MFI credentials, and perhaps regularly reporting first pass success rates, the amount of education that is provided for these paramedics who are providing critical care interventions. I know personally I want to be in the lab or performing these high acuity, low occurrence procedures at least once quarterly, if not monthly. And that's oftentimes not the case in the pre-hospital sphere. And just ensuring that for those providers that we entrust with, the advanced airway and literally having somebody's lives in their hands, that we are providing them both regionally as well as the agency level the highest quality education to ensure that they are able to meet those standards.
I think that each agency that does MFI has all those statistics, and we could readily, access them, and the medical director from each of those agencies should be looking at them. I think that it's never a bad idea. Maybe what we should always ensure is at least once a year, some of our CME that we do incorporates that, and maybe incorporates a sim lab of some nature, which would be open to everybody who does MFI and to, facilitate the process. I think, airways are those tricky things, and they can go bad quick. So I think there's never anything wrong with that, no matter who the person on the hands-on the equipment is.
We have 2 additional cases which we have not reviewed in full yet. For a tube that was dislodged upon transfer from the EMS cot to the UV stretcher, as well as another concern for esophageal intubation, which we have yet to review. David, please.
Any thoughts about Uji or PEEP for injector tubes?
I think that would be a great consideration. I would be highly motivated if in a tag we were able to put together some additional recommendations for the Hudson Valley in addition to the state ALS protocols on best practice and mandatory equipment. I know a gum elastic bougie is something that, in my estimation, is mandatory when dealing with an advanced airway because it really does provide a highly inexpensive backup device that I think it behooves all providers tasked with the advanced airway to have within their arsenal. And I think inexpensive devices like a heat valve, a positive end expiratory pressure valve, which can simply attach to your EDM and provide PEEP for patients who are otherwise difficult to oxygenate, are a very low-cost, high-yield intervention for specifically medics who are operating with that MFI credential.
Do you think that that device works?
PEEP, without a doubt.
That little handheld thing?
5 or 10.
Yeah, 5 or 10. And
Okay.
there's fantastic video of it in the lab with sheep lungs and human lungs and things like that that show your oxygenation and ventilation differences with and without PEEP. And really what it has to do with, at the molecular level, the adhesion of the lung itself and the elasticity and compliance. So without PEEP, each subsequent ventilation requires greater mechanical effort to get the alveoli to that level of open distension. And what PEEP does is it mitigates that process and really optimizes the alveoli in situations such as CHF, COPD, pneumonia, to maximize the oxygenation.
Plus, it's fun to see bougie.
Doesn't everybody have a bougie though? And that's doing MFI? We don't mandate it. I mean, we should. It's an easy thing to mandate. I mean, it's so cheap. Everybody can be compliant. I mean, you guys not have bougies?
I think
in
every
ER?
ED has bougies, but
Like-
it's not pre-hospital. Have you guys ever used bougies?
We've just started.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because it's not ubiquitous pre-hospital.
Maybe we should.
We
have a
could, we
quorum
could,
at
we
the
could,
next meeting?
we can do it
Make
as
motion?
local, regional recommendation, absolutely.
I think that's going to be our takeaway here is let's discuss best practice with the state ALS protocol certainly advanced the spectrum of care. And I'm a huge advocate for educating our paramedics to the highest level possible and ensuring they have an A+ medical decision-making task algorithm. I think at the Hudson Valley, we can take this opportunity to in fact elevate our care again, and we have some best practice guidance and standards, including equipment such as inexpensive additions of the gum elastic bougie, positive and expiratory pressure valve, as well as mandating that a certain part of the CME is advanced airway on a quarterly basis in a simulation lab. We can really hone out or tease out the highest level of care for our patient population.
The little PEEP valves are like $5 each?
$5.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Bougie's $5 also.
Yeah, bougies are definitely. So, you want to make a tag?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody interested and would like to sit on that tag and devise some of these ideas we just bounced around this morning, please, reach out to Arshad and let's, move it forward. And maybe by the time we have the next meeting, we could have some movement. And then you'll also have reviewed those other 2 cases, so they kind of fit in line with exactly what we're talking about.
2 questions. One, should we just refer that to protocol and have Dr. Arshad come in and let them do that since that's a part of their function anyway? And 2 is, what are the components of the evaluation subcommittee report? We've got additional cases. Who sits on that committee these days?
Me, Mark, Arshad, and who was the other person? We had.
Is there pre-hospital representation?
Yeah,
And if
there's
not, is that-
supposed to be, and what you can do is, you can, for each evaluation committee, you can invite individuals, just to give yourself a rounded out representation,
Right.
for sure.
So we should just make sure we do that as part of that discussion phase.
Yeah, he had sent it all out to us
Yeah.
electronically
And then Jeff, of course, is our QA director.
before, so we had all looked at it. But that could be, the only thing that I would say though, Michael, if we did protocol committee, we'd have to allow other people who are interested to come on over,
Well,
yeah.
They're certainly welcome.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is to not limit it and, open the invitation to
Absolutely.
anybody who's interested and,
And it always is. I mean,
and it does meld together nicely.
Yeah.
And
I think
certainly
that
we
might
would
be
want
appropriate.
representation from the private agencies as well.
Right.
As many MFI paramedics as possible.
Right.
If and after the consensus.
So we can do that.
Okay, sounds good.
So just as a last conclusion to this case, I feel comfortable removing the restriction for MFI for this particular paramedic, given the remediation, the skill set, the personal conversations that I've had with this provider.
He's never going to not pull the two again.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, our best education and remediation is when stuff happens, and that's something you say to yourself, it's never going to happen to me again. I mean, we can all, I'm sure, think of one procedure, at least in our lifetime, that we had those events occur, and unfortunately, that's part of this job, really. Okay, thank you, Dr. Rashad, I appreciate it. Dr. Berkowitz is not here, but what we're going to have to do, he said to me at CMAC last week, he's leaving Westchester. I don't know if people know that. Yeah, right?
Yeah, so the
He's going
question
to
is who's going
Northwell?
to take over the helicopter.
Yeah,
It might be David, I'm not sure.
okay. So we just have to talk about that. Now, RTAC, was there a meeting in between? I thought it was canceled.
Nope, there was.
Oh, STAC was canceled. Yeah.
RTAC, there was a meeting. Most of the stuff really was uneventful on the EMS side. There was a lot of discussion on falls and prevention, and they've changed some of the format at RTAC where we're now doing case studies, and we're doing it, either somebody brings in a case or Dr. Lombardi has a case that he felt was important, and a lot of it is transfers from other hospitals coming to them, what should be done, what wasn't done, what was done, and what could be done better. So we spent a lot of time with that. We didn't spend too much time on anything on the EMS side. So nothing really pertains.
We did touch again on the high flow oxygen at a hospital head trauma.
Right.
Because I guess they went to the state and the state wasn't willing to change the protocols to address it. So they're trying to work out a way to see if we can get EMS providers to administer the oxygen.
That's been an ongoing, there were some studies done, and in fact, Glenn was here one day and made a presentation about the results of the study that they had made, and they're still looking for more oxygenation at the BLS and ALS level coming in, especially with traumatic brain injury. Now, there is one change that I did notice in the BLS protocols. On the bottom of the airway management, it says, in a situation where trauma is there, you might want to use high flow oxygen. So I think there is a little bit moving in that direction.
A little wiggle
not a
room.
lot. Yeah.
Okay, quality improvement report, Jeff.
Okay, Memphis 3.40, the bridge at the state is now active. We are in the process of moving over image trend clients first. We currently have 4 of those image trend clients on our regional bridge. So it's a dual simultaneous push. Data goes to our bridge and to the state simultaneously, except if a document does not meet validation criteria. For it to be accepted by the state, validation score has to be 97 or greater. If it's less, it gets kicked back to the provider, they fix it, resubmit it. And agencies that submit data in large batches, that could be kind of a problem, which is why it's encouraged to submit data as it comes in, rather than in a large group. Image Trend has done a fair amount of work on this new bridge, and they are adding a much better analytic tool to the report writer, which was intended to allow us to pull out better data so we can actually take a look and consider what KPIs are for each agency and help them establish some internal measures and measure against not just our system, but the other systems that use the collaborative protocols and are in the collaborative group with us, with EPCR, and come up with pretty much a state standard for care and see how the measures work and where we can improve.
Also on QAQI at the state level, every region has different QAQI and different standards and stuff. So one of the things that Ryan Greenberg, who's the new director of the Bureau of VMS, has requested that we get together and we report on our system of how it works on our QAQI, and he wants to come with a statewide system where everybody is really doing QAQI the same way throughout each region. And the other thing that he's wants to come up with, which the KPI, key performance indicators, and have that where each agency could be evaluated against themselves and against their region and against the state at that level to try to improve the KPI of each agency. So I think we're going to see that fairly shortly. The other thing that was mentioned that we haven't really talked about too much is the hospital hub. Do you want to go into that, Joe? The EPCRs are going into what's known as the hospital hub, which will allow the hospitals to pull their EPCRs to them from all the agencies that are electronic. So with that in mind, in doing that and being able to retrieve all of them from a central point, the other push is going to be for all agencies to go to EPCR. So we see a lot of push on that from the state, although we haven't seen any money on that yet. So we're not sure, but if you have influence over an agency and can convince them to go EPCR, that would be a great asset to all of us in getting that data.
Only half of our agencies, right?
About half of them are EPCR.
So the other half are still on paper.
And is there a cost associated with the hospital, or is that into the hospital?
I'm sure there's a cost. I don't know if there's any. I think the cost is in the creation of the link between the hospital hub to the hospital system. I don't think that's generic. I think that has to be written software company. And some people said it was expensive, and some people said it was inexpensive. So I haven't really looked into it myself. So.
It was similar to the HDE program that vendors currently are offering.
I think it's similar to that, but it depends on what vendor you have that might get all of the input from different systems coming in. Hospital Hub does do all of the systems.
The vendor programs allow outside agencies that are not on their platform to purchase a bridge to their program to be able to enter.
Yeah, I don't know if they do that to all of the EPCR providers that are out there.
Boy, he mentioned it, Ryan, and didn't talk anything about money.
Yeah.
Just FYI. I thought it was going to be like a freebie, and that way you could just connect on and utilize the information. Alrighty then. Is that it, Jeff? Okay, so no PAD or EpiPen, albuterol, glucometer, or Narcan sites for this morning. Protocol committee, Michael.
Well, first, congratulations to Dr. Murphy, who has been promoted at ORMC.
Oh, I buried that memo.
Who is now the Vice President of Emergency Medicine, Observation Care, and Physician Advisor. So congratulations.
Yeah, it just means I do more.
So just to add on to what she's already reported, the goal is also to roll out the next version of the collaborative protocol with the new statewide protocol. The reason it's been delayed is because all of the BLS protocol is incorporated into the new collaborative, and therefore it will be a part of the app and the process once that happens. So the goal is to get a state approval in January and then roll it out sometime after that. As a result of no action on the BLS or ALS protocol, it was decided at the collaborative group that the previously approved AEMT protocols from May will be rolled out in a revision. So you will be seeing a revised collaborative protocol being distributed in the near future, which incorporates only changes for the AEMT level, and it will include a training component for those areas where there have been change in the AEMT protocol. I believe Dave is going to speak about it, but nitrous oxide has been added to the for pediatric patients, has been added to the collaborative protocol. They have removed the dilution requirements for amiodarone boluses in cardiac arrest. They have made ketorolac standing order for adults and changed the dose to 15 milligrams IV and 30 milligrams IM. They've also made a change which allows the first cardioversion dose for unstable, irregular, wide complex to be 200 joules. This is now consistent with the dose of unstable, irregular, narrow complex tachycardia. Then there was a lengthy discussion. It was initially added to AEMT level that we put McGill forceps in for obstructed airways. Then there was a discussion at the collaborative meeting that maybe it should not have been added as it is not currently in the New York State curriculum. So I believe at the end of the day, it was not, it did not stay in the protocols as a result of it not being in the New York State AEMT curriculum. National Standard Curriculum, which is used by New York State. That is correct, I'm sorry. And then there is and needs to be future discussion about the governance of the collaborative group. There certainly may need to be some funding to support the administrative responsibilities for this group to maintain the document, to maintain the changes that are necessary with the apps, the printing, the clerical work involved, but that's to be discussed at a future meeting. And that is all I have.
Yeah, we had thought about each region, coming up with a figure that we make it standardized for every region just to work into their budget and to relinquish to the collaborative group, because we realized after this last revision and adding the BLS, it was exhaustive for both Dr. Folligar and then on to Daly, and to have some kind of support, both from a prospective, just even indexing all of those protocols was like crazy amount of time.
They, Nassau County has also joined the collaborative protocol.
Oh yeah, we should have announced that. That was bad.
So the only two regions that are left are New York City and Suffolk County. Everybody else in the state will be on the same ALS protocols.
Which is pretty amazing. I think we'll never get New York City because it's just too different for us. But I'm not sure what's the problem with Suffolk, but it's okay.
They'll come out.
Eventually. New business. Dave, you're up.
Perfect. All right, so hopefully this will all work. So Dr. Arshad asked that I do a presentation on nitrous and the sort of Arlington experience with this. Jeff, what do you want me to do with this?
Just exit from it, that's fine.
Sure that'll work. There we go. Okay. All right, so if you guys, you want to turn the lights off over there, you can see a little better, that'd be great.
The bottom.
There you go. Okay. So a little bit on nitrous oxide, a little history on it. Pretty much it was first synthesized in the 1700s. It was used for a variety of reasons throughout time. and dentistry and surgery is used as an anesthetic in 1844.
What were the recreational uses in 1799?
They actually had what were called laughing gas parties.
Okay.
In
All right.
the bourgeoisie. So
Okay. All right.
that's what it was, yeah. And sort of is still used that way, since in a variety of places. But it has a wide use that you can see. We're of course not looking to use it in rocket science in our industry, but it is there nonetheless. In terms of safety, it can be pretty safe, but there are some limitations with it, and that is that it's minimally metabolized in humans, and so we have to be concerned about its use in confined spaces, which I will go into. To that point, there's a NIOSH recommended 8-hour time-weighted average of 25 parts per million. So, legal side is that it's not really regulated by the DEA, but there are FDA requirements, and different states sort of manage and handle nitrous use differently. So what does it do? There's a lot of stuff that it actually does. The predominant is that it works on the nicotinic acetylcholine channels, and that's how it predominantly exerts its effect. I won't go too far into this unless anybody wants a patho presentation. In this case, then I'll ask Dr. Hirschfeld to offer CMEs as well.
A podcast.
Yeah. These are some of the old indications from our previous protocol. And so you'll see in terms of the new, there's pain management. How we parse out when it's to use is against contraindications, which I will show here next, I think. And these are predominantly because nitrous oxide has a particular partial pressure. And as it warms up, that partial pressure then increases rather dramatically. And so if you put this into a warm enclosed space, it'll expand and can cause further damage, which is why you don't want to use it in a pneumothorax, intracranial issues, or things like emphysema, sinusitis, that kind of stuff, because it will get into that space, potentially expand and cause paralysis. Effects. Predominantly, we have reduction of pain sensitivity, and some of the side effects also include some of these other things that we've seen experientially, but these are sort of full lists. I just highlighted the ones that we've been typically a part of. And so in the Hudson Valley, that's the 1799 time frame there on the left. We haven't done that. But on the right-hand side, this is a typical nitronox unit. That is on the ambulance. And so there's a demand valve component right here that the person will use on their own, hold it in place, and when they've had enough nitrous, they will typically take it out of their mouth, drop the unit. That's when they've been dosed, as it were. And so each patient may have a different dosing, and so this is a way to regulate their inherent dosing. And the same will hold true for pediatric patients as well. They just inhale it. When they can't hold it up anymore, they've had enough. We've used it in Arlington for a really long time. So what is that, like 28, almost 30 years or so that we've used it. Other groups have used it around the Hudson Valley. In 2014, there was discussion about not including it in the protocols, so we did a retrospective pain management study among the agencies in the Hudson Valley using it. And came up that there's an actually statistically significant decrease in pain associated with the use of nitrous oxide. We elicited the help of the Dutchess County Department of Health statisticians. We ended up doing a t-test and a Wilcoxon rank test and came up with the same results, is that there's a decrease, an average decrease of a little over 4 pain points on a 1 to 10 scale. If anybody wants those tests and results, I'm happy to email them out. That's a whole other presentation. This is our current pain management protocol, where it's a nitrous oxide self-administered inhalation if equipped, so it's not a requirement. Again, the indications sort of go along with when you would use it for isolated extremity fractures, some kind of pain management otherwise, but not against any of the contraindications. So we talk about some limitations, is that there's an 8-hour time-weighted average of 25 parts per million of time exposed to this. The ADA, where this is predominantly used in dentist office, have a scavenger unit in place so that their staff is not exposed to this over time, day after day after day. Since it is not metabolized, it exerts its effects and then leaves the body readily. Their suction requirements are greater than 45 liters per minute. The limitations in an ambulance are that the suction units are capable of just over 30 liters per minute were we to use a scavenger system. So that's one potential limitation. Although we have windows and vents and all that kind of stuff, that's all very, very useful. So we decided to do another safety study to determine what we needed to do in the back of an ambulance. We tested 3 types of ambulances, a type 1, a type 2, a type 3. We concurrently tested the driver area and patient area, and then under 3 conditions of no airflow at all, airflow within the cabin, and then airflow with use of the scavenger and vent. And the results in the driver's area are that we exceeded the time-weighted average within about 60 seconds in the driver area when it was open with no airflow, but then it dramatically decreased after closing the door between the compartments and opening the windows and turning the vents on. In the passenger, which is obviously bad, you don't want to drive a falling asleep, going down the road with nitrous. In the patient area, we have some similar results, but because it's used predominantly there, now the driver's area is sort of capped off with the vent on and windows open per se and scavenger system in place. It is far below the 8-hour time-weighted average, but it took, and you can see in the earlier cases there with no airflow, the numbers went up pretty significantly. So one of the other questions that came up among the group when I asked who wanted to see what in a presentation were what do you do about diversion and provider safety. In terms of diversion, we sort of follow a bit of what's happening in Vermont. We have a log of the nitrous tanks that are weighed ahead of time, after use, and there's a pretty specific group of people that are able to use them, and so that's all documented in our electronic charting. Vermont here says that you have to put the exhaust fan on and open the window at least an inch in the back to have provider safety, and then they have logs and they have these tags to show how much was in the tank, when you used it, how much was used afterwards. There's really no other way. This is just a liquid that off gases into a gas when that's used. Here's our logs that we've used, just to show how we're tracking this per patient, per use, per provider, and per week. And then we use a dual key system with our narcotics access that can be turned off and on remotely for access to narcotics and then nitrous oxide as well. And so that's how we maintain safety. So our recommendations are to use nitrous oxide for initial therapy and transitory pain management, meaning that if I have someone that is in a crumpled mess at the bottom of the stairs and needs to be moved, maybe nitrous is the thing to do at the moment while we're getting them moving, while we can start an IV and get them on some other pain management that might be appropriate. Or if we need to splint an extremity, use nitrous, but they don't need to be on pain meds the whole time. We just use this for right now, splint the extremity, they're okay, we stop the pain meds and they're fine with that. So it can be an intermediary medication as well as a transitory pain management medication. When in the ambulance, use a vent fan environmental controls, very much like the Vermont study there. And then discontinue use on arrival at the hospital. And then maintain patient care until the patient can remain unsupervised and or care will be continuous. Not that they're unsupervised in the hospital, but many times we'll deliver a patient to a room, get some information, we leave, the hospital staff is there, get some information, and they leave, and then the patient is in the room by themselves for a short amount of time. What we're saying is stay with them until they can be in an unsupervised state on their own, not being under the influence of nitrous. What I did not put in here is that it is extremely short acting, and so once they're off of this, they're, within several minutes, they are very close back to their normal state, or I should say pre-nitrous state. And so that's what I have for you guys. We've had great success with it. We have not had any provider issues, safety issues. We haven't had any turnover of care issues at the hospital. Typically, we'll take them off, have started something else, or it gives us some time for the physician to evaluate them and then decide a further course of action, which may be better medications than what we provide pre-hospitally anyway, or something different that's more appropriate for the patient. So that's what I have.
Have you ever had any issues with diversion?
No.
Okay.
We stopped having balloons in the fire department so that there aren't any.
Methodology for diversion.
So your proposal is to expand this to the pediatric population, right?
It's already approved in the collaboratives that way. We would like to see it used in that method. In Shandaken especially, over the winter months, they see a tremendous amount of trauma because of
Ski slopes.
Ski slopes and whatnot, which affect adults and kids alike. And they've used this very well in that setting.
What's the lower age limit that's in the they are putting in the protocol? Or the child's old enough to obey commands?
Correct. Right. So they would have to at least have the mental status to be able to follow direction and commands and to be able to utilize this kind of thing.
Is that the verbiage that's there, or like, do you know? I don't know. See what they put.
I believe there is.
Yeah, I believe that the verbiage is the person has to be able to follow commands, have a patent airway, not have any of the contraindications, because they are going to have to be able to follow what you say with putting this on and using it. If they can't do that, then that just doesn't work.
Because it sounds like, I think it sounds like a great idea, and I think we should go forward or try to go forward with it. But I just have in the back of my mind like a vision of a mother holding this thing onto a child's face and no one taking it off because the mom's keeping it on and the child's,
Yeah. Now the patient themselves would have to be able to
self-administer, right?
Yeah, what scavenger you use?
So there's a number of them out there. We end up using a modified scavenger for our environment because the dental ones came with this big whole unit, and so we ended up using the tubing off of one and plugged it into our own suction machine versus having their portable suction units attached to their suction device themselves. I don't recall the actual brand name that we have, but that's something that I can.
So your best practice guidance, Steve, is to close the window between the driver's cab and the passenger's cab.
Yes.
Initiate the exhaust fan.
Correct.
Have at least one window open 1 inch.
At least. That's Vermont's study, like.
And then ultimately employ a scavenger.
Yes. And again, the time-weighted average for a 20-minute drive in this scenario is far below
Was 18,
NIOSH.
1859. And those NIOSH's proper limit they recommended was 25.
Yeah.
So 18 is the mark.
So the protocol reads nitrous oxide by self-administered inhalation if legal.
And the pediatric protocol is the same, or?
That is the pediatric pain management protocol.
We don't have enough people to do a motion anyway, so
Yeah, we're one shy.
next meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
it's going to
I
be
mean,
in the
it's in the
collaborative anyway, so
protocol,
it'll
so
go
it
through as
doesn't
part of
even
that
matter.
process.
Great.
I'm very
And we can
happy-
make recommendations if you want to add something in there
Yeah, and
specific.
I'm very happy to do any
Yeah.
education for other agencies interested in doing this.
So David, what I guess I would ask that maybe you draft something that meets the more like efficient that would advise other agencies about just those recommendations about safety, storage.
Oh, contraindications.
And,
Dave, maybe you can add in at the end, after the patient's off, really, who stage of the patient,
Right.
or a particular point of time to be decided,
prevent the disease that is tied up, and also help with the transfer process. The patient is sedated until they wake up. And provide a little safety for the patient while the ED staff is getting involved with the patient.
It sounds like what everyone is saying as we formalize this process, if you are able to create an advisory or a handout that we can share amongst different agencies, but also amongst different emergency departments to help educate them. Because for a lot of us, this is new, and your presentation is exceptional. I think it's going to add a lot of value to our patients.
I will note that this is at the AEMT level as well.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Do you mind turning the light back on? Thank you.
One question. David, what about the event with MCI when you have multiple crews on board and you transfer the patient?
I'm sorry, Dr. Matt, I lost you.
What
What did
about
you
if
say?
you have an MCI event and you have to transfer care to another team that's not using nitrous oxide? Maybe something to think about within your protocols to allow an MCI event. How you would handle it?
I don't know that we would use nitrous just because it's so provider-patient specific, where providers may have to deal with a number of patients. I'd be a little cautious about not monitoring every single patient.
Unless we just don't open the windows or turn on the exhaust fan, throw them all in there.
Well, that's another option.
The multi-dose.
Multi-dose
Like
trial.
those meds that do 6
That's what we
meds.
caution though, if there are multiple patients in the cabin, it should
Yeah.
more than one.
All right, thank you. So CMAC report I kind of already did, and Michael brought up the collaborative committee update. So moving on to new forum, or open forum, I had sent to the office, we constantly are talking about the drugs that are not available, that are out there, that are, going on a shortage list, in this continuous process that occurs. So I'll pass it around, and some of you may have seen it. 5 hospitals have banded together with some outside agencies to form a drug company. And what they're going to do is look at developing and synthesizing and putting out there all the drugs that we need that keep going on these shortage lists. And it's an alternative to, this place where we are kind of held captive by the large drug companies, and that people not wanting to synthesize or do the real cheap drugs that have been around forever. So it's an interesting twist on the event. So we can pass that around so people will see. Also, that came to the office was from the Homeland Security and Department of Transportation, along with Health and Human Services, was a whole updated nerve agent handout in terms of the purpose, the background, and the symptoms, and the methodology to using remedies for nerve agent exposures and the protocols. So it's something they wanted to put back out there for everyone to have. So I can pass it around. If somebody wants copies, we can make it for you. Some of you might have seen it already. Oh, I forgot. I should have, before I ask for anybody else to bring something up, can I read into the minutes the actions? I'm sorry, I should have done this sooner. So first, from the Department of Health, we have a confirmation of appointment of Mr. Violante to the New York State HVREMSCO. He'll be representing us from the Hudson Valley HVREMSCO, and your term will go through December of 2019. Thank you, David, and appreciate that. Now, not so good ones. So from that was the good one. That was the good one. So this is an action from Department of Health for Stanford Smith out of Brookhaven, New York. It is for violation of Part 800 with a suspension for 1 year and 6 months, concurrent serving, and a civil penalty of $4,000 towards that individual. We have next Melvin Harrington out of Andes, New York. Is that how you say it? Andes, New York. Is a suspension for 6 months effective September 17th for a individual certificate for this gentleman with violations of Part 800 and a civil penalty of 1,000. We did deliver this to the medical region medical director of our area because that falls into our region. We reached out to them principally. Next, Bayside Community Ambulance Corps out of Bayside, New York. As a result of an investigation by the Department of Health, the agency certificate has been revoked. So Bayside Community Ambulance Corps, and that was as of May 29th. And lastly, Alejandra Serrano out of the Bronx, as a result of investigation, the violation of Part 800 has revoked their ability, individual New York State certification to perform, and this will be in effect as of May 21st. So since our last meeting. Sorry, I should have put those announcements into the minutes earlier. Okay, continuing open forum. Any new things anybody wants to bring up? Any announcements?
I'd really like to thank Kim and Lucas for all of their time. And Ryan trying to replace him, but I'm not able to replace. Truly.
Yeah, Kim, how long has it been? It's like, yeah, you don't want to fess up, huh?
I think it was 8 years.
Okay.
That's when you time out. You time to let you go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all your time, and it's a lot of, it's a lot of time and effort, and you guys spend these exhausting hours on committees and such, and move things forward. So we appreciate it, Kim, and with what you did with our office before that, even. So, anything else?
We've been working on developing an ambulance restocking protocol specific to our campuses, just so that we can really optimize EMS turnaround times. And I know Dave has been doing a lot of investigation into what we're required to do and what is optimal to do for our campuses. So I know he wanted to just discuss that a little bit further and see if it's potentially scalable to any of our additional hospitals.
So is this Duchess?
It's just Vassar specific.
Oh, Vassar.
We've
Okay.
shared amongst our sister hospitals, whoever wants to participate.
Yes. So the policy that has come forth is a safe harbor ruling by the Office of Inspector General for restocking of ambulances, and it needs to be uniform in two methodologies. You have to publicly announce your program, so you have to post your program, and it makes specific reference to following a current policy from a regional authority or the state protocols. And in researching for our program at Vassar, the medical control plan for the Hudson Valley specifically says to replace one-for-one basis non-pharmaceutical medical supplies used in field units for those patients brought to that facility. I would like to see if there's a possibility to formalizing that to a policy. That would also include pharmacological agents. Remo and Westchester both have similar programs that I can pass to Pam that require agencies, facilities to either stock it or not to, and you have the choice under the safe harbor ruling to either participate or not participate, and also choose what level you're going to participate to. But all of that has to be in your public notice. And it's just in the research I found that the wording of the medical control plan is a little dated in reference to the restock.
Yeah, some places it's been a real hot button issue of whether they want to or not, so for sure.
Depends on how much interaction they've had with the Office of Inspector General.
Yeah.
And our policy is that we restock to all EMS agencies, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, and linen. And linen is part of the program. Obviously, we do not restock controlled substances. That has to be part of the individual agency's plan. Out of our hospitals, there's only 2 agencies that currently are restocked from our pharmacies as part of their plan.
And that was something they worked out with their Part 800.
The Part 800 portion isn't specific enough to tell what you're going to supply and what you can't supply. What I would like to see is a policy from Hudson Valley that says that you would supply the non-pharmaceutical medical supplies, linen, and pharmaceuticals, but it is a choice on the entity that has authority. So Putnam could choose not to supply pharmaceuticals and medical supplies, but choose to do linen. Orange Regional could choose to supply all of it. It has to do with the public notice that they put out. But in your medical control plan, it doesn't specifically say pharmaceuticals.
So I'm a little confused on what you're asking. Are you asking to mandate from Hudson Valley a decision one way or another?
Not to mandate it, just to have in the policy that if you choose to restock, that it would be the policy as provided by the mirror Remo and Westchester's plan. So the individual facility has the right to decline to do it, but as a region, it is recommended that you do it to the medical control plan.
Yes.
In Ulster County, we have a restock form, and we do follow the safe harbors, and we restock everything that you mentioned, even the narcotics for 2 agencies because they're so small. The rest of the agencies, like Mobile Life, they purchase their own. I'd gladly share that form with you. It's a 2-part form. One the agency keeps, the other goes with the patient's drug.
On the Westchester policy, there is an example of the form that they currently use, and Remo uses a form as well. But you can document the information through the PCR as long as the hospital system is documenting the outflow of the material, and the PCR can be utilized in that methodology.
And that's what the form does show. They got restocked, and for some reason, we're sure they can come back later and say they didn't.
So part of it is to try to reduce the amount of paperwork that either agencies or hospitals are required to do. That's why we chose not to do it tonight. We're going to do it through EPCR.
The restocking?
The restocking will be documented by the EPCRs.
Just, again, in the past, the medical control plan goes through the protocol committee. We would look at that as a topic.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
You know, a recommendation, because we just reissued all those administrative policies anyway. And if Dave has another one here for the nitrous, that should be a part of that process.
Can I add these to his, so he can have them as a reference? Okay. So let's do that, and we'll put it to the next committee meeting, and just another part of the agenda we add on. And then we'll report back here next meeting. But I would imagine it's not an issue. I mean, it's a thing where we just need to have a modality for people to do it in a uniform process and to have the public announcement about it. Okay, any other information? All right.
And another quick policy standpoint we could also relegate to the protocol committee is for medical control. I know most folks either call in, and that's what's supported by our current documentation. A lot of us in the region are using an app-based method of call-ins now. So we just wanted to ensure compliance and see if we could work in some additional language to make sure that we're compliant with the medical control process for those facilities that are using the app.
Just including it in there.
Just adding it.
Yeah, just adding the verbiage.
An appropriate means of medical control contact.
Yeah, and as long as it's functional and the capability. Another thing for you, Michael. Okay, anything else? All right, I'll have a motion to adjourn. And second? Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and all of us that had to stay behind from San Diego.